Welcome back. This is Chicken Philosophy. The Meccan Revelations, part 35, in which I will continue reading the Meccan Revelations, a translation of the Futuhat by Ibn al-Arabi. But first, this is a very special episode. This is the 15th and final episode of the color scheme emphasis intro episodes. What are you talking about, BT? Well, if you look up here, you might notice there are 15 different thingies with different color combinations. And so if you recall, for the black and blue, we had Edward reciting Carl Jung, and he had the blue and black Buddhas on the screen. For the red and purple, it was Gwydion reciting Teilhard de Chardin, and he had the red and purple saints, the lady saints, is that PC? Up on the screen, Hedwig from Poland and Margaret Mary from France. And then for the yellow and orange, we had me reciting Martin Luther. And what did we do for that one? Oh, yeah, I had some stuff going on up there. I just kind of went with the orange and yellow petals from the rose. It was an idea. Anyway, then there was, of course, the blue and white, in which Edward got a little bit controversial, talking about the blue and white flag of Scotland, and ended up going with the blue seal and the white tiger to represent the color scheme for that episode while reading The Secret of the Golden Flower. Then, of course, there was the red and green Christmas episode in which Gwydion recited Meccan Revelation, which is what we're reciting today. That was 33, I believe. And he had the red Christmas tree ornament and the green Buddha, who was actually Jesus. And if that is confusing, then click here and watch that one instead of this one, because you don't want to miss that. And then, of course, there was the black and yellow Max Headroom themed episode with the yellow and black Max Headroom. Anyway, then there was the blue and purple, in which Edward recited the very last of Teilhard de Chardin here on Chicken Philosophy with the Gentleman Saints, the brothers of Yeshua, Jude and Simon. And then, or Jude and Simon. Anyway, then there was, of course, the orange and red, in which Gwydion recited Martin Luther, and he had a carrot and some Coca-Cola cans with Deadpool and Wolverine on them. He's Gwydion. He does weird shit. And then, of course, there was me again reciting The Secret of the Golden Flower, so it was yellow and white. And we had the flaming balls of energy and the yellow and white high priestess in the center, remember? And then there was the green and blue episode in which Edward recited Meccan Revelation, and that was episode 34. And it was the one with the blue Taj Mahal and the green lamp, the genie in the lamp. And then there was the red and black episode. That one was pretty cool. And in which Gwydion had the scanner from the front of Kit in Knight Rider going on to represent the colors. And then, of course, there was the debut episode, the last time you saw me, the debut episode of the new series, Nag Hammadi, on Chicken Philosophy. And the yellow and purple, oh yeah, it was all about the temperance path. And so there was the key of the temperance path. That's what the AA symbol was, the triangle in the circle. And then there was Edward reciting Martin Luther. Always fun, that wacky Martin Luther. And he had the chalice and the host in blue and orange, as well as the orange Catholic Bible. Dune fans might be giggling. And then the previous episode before this one was Gwydion reciting The Secret of the Golden Flower, and it was red and white, and it was the red and white Foo Dogs, Harry and Sally. That's canon. That's their names. And then today, here we are, and it's green and yellow. And I was left with the task of deciding what to talk about for green and yellow. And I don't want to get typecasted any more than I am already. I mean, the idea of this is that it can unfold into any form. So to be locked into the form of, yes, I am a Golden Dawn esoteric nerd, and I'm going to apply everything to Golden Dawn correspondences, is really kind of tiresome, which is why it helps to not be BT all the time. You know, Gwydion is a big help for that. It always has been since 2001. 2000, really, the end of 2000. It's a long story. It has to do with Marion Zimmer Bradley. But anyway, indirectly. Never mind that. What am I talking about? Yes, so, obviously, my first thought was to go with the green and yellow. I mean, I could have gone with the petals. So it says Aleph is air, and then Dalet is Venus. Dalet is green, Aleph is yellow, and then in the zodiacals we've got Lamed, which is Libra for green, and Tet, which is yellow, not green yellow, you freaks. It's yellow. Damn it. Zodi is the star. Never mind. For Tet, which is Leo. But, So here we have the tree of life, and there's the green Sephira and the yellow Sephira, and in between them is the path of death. Ah! And, I mean, that's not a very good vibe. Who wants to have, like, some death symbol up on the screen the whole time? Like, yeah, it's the death episode. Yeah. And we kind of covered death indirectly a little bit in the temperance episode, because the whole point was there's death and there's the devil, and you don't want to take either one. You want to go with the middle one. This is death and this is death. Well, anyway, so don't go that way. Once upon a time in the original order, when they first invented the 5=6 grade, I mean, in that order, they had people jumping from this like Sephirotic-based, sort of Egyptian-ish based, and Chaldean and a number of other things. But anyway, they had them jump from one order to another, jump from Netzach to Tiferet across the path of death. And apparently people were, I don't know, losing their minds or something. And so they decided to bring in a new grade called the Portal of the Vault of the Adepti as a spirit grade in between the green and the yellow, in which that whole lesson that I went over last time about don't go this way, don't go that way, take the temperance path, was emphasized in the portal grade. So, yeah, okay, so death is there. I could do a yellow and green death. But, And then I was thinking LVX. L is life, V is death, and Scorpio, just like the death card here, wherever it is. And then the yellow is like Tiferet. It gets a little confusing because in that context, the yellow is soul, and soul is technically orange in the King's Scale of the Path. And then it's not, the L isn't Venus, though maybe it should be. They went with Virgo because of Virgo Maria, the Virgo. You know, she's a Virgo. Get it? Virgo? Eh? Immaculate Conception? Virgo? She hasn't had any obelisks or whatever. No. You could just as easily make her green and call her Venus. I mean, it's right there. L, Lamed, Libra, Venus, day house. But they went with Virgo. So yellow, green, death, yellow, if you stretch it and use the queen scale of the Sephira that corresponds with soul instead of the color of soul. So, yeah, it's like it's close. That's all close stuff that's close. Further, I could have gone into how the 50, noon is the path of death, and noon is 50, and there's 50 beads if you only count the beads in between the decanate divider. You know, here's 10, and there's 5 sections, and so, yeah, there's a lot more than 50, but if you only count these specific ones, there's 50, which corresponds to noon, and you keep saying, ora pro nobis, nuc et in ora mortis, as in Morticia Adams, death, So death and Venus, see, you ever notice that? It makes a Venus symbol. And it's the path of death that leads from the Sephira that corresponds to Venus to the Sephira that corresponds to the Sun. In the end, I decided to do none of these things. Zero. I decided instead to Google, because I know that green in Islam, obviously we've got the green, green, we all know green. It's for some reason is important in Islam, right? So I thought I would Google do a little Googling. And so I Googled green in Islam, and I found this document that has all the colors in Islam. And so there's a lot of stuff here, but for today's purposes, we will look at green and yellow. And then that'll give us a guiding inspiration for what to do about the green and yellow of this final episode. The whole point is that I was, I think, the only one who was noticing the color scheme. Every episode of the 15, there's 15 permutations, right? And each one of the 15 has a different color combination. And I was rather enjoying the color combination. So after today, instead of talking about it for 20 minutes and leaving it up there the whole time and just really driving the point to the point of overkill home, after today, this will hang out up at the top of the screen for maybe 8 to 10 seconds at the beginning of each episode. And those who were here for these 15 episodes, or even one of these 15 episodes, will probably go, oh, it's a green and yellow episode, like that one time when BT rambled on, right? Okay, what does it say? Green in Islam. Green appears in the Quran 6 times. This is from Clothing and Colors in Early Islam. It's a PDF you get when you Google colors in Islam. Green appears in the Quran 6 times as an adjective and once as a participle. The Quran mentions green in 2 contexts. The first is the description of the believer's clothing and furniture in heaven. The second is descriptions of vegetation and fertile lands. Green is a recommended color for both men and women. Green and white together constitute the primary colors of heaven. Although the symbolic meanings of green are contradictory, since on the one hand it is the color of degeneration, and yet on the other it is attributed to growth, Islam has chosen to adopt its positive meanings. Okay, it goes on and on and on, and you can read all about it I'll put the link to this document in the description. And so there you have a little bit about green. And as far as what we're going to put on the screen, just hold your horses now there, buddy. We'll get to that. Okay, yellow in Islam. Yellow appears several times, 5, in the Quran as a description of vegetation in association with hellfire. Now, I approve. You've heard me talk about it before, those who pay close attention to every episode, that, red in Shingon and in Tibetan Buddhism and in Wicca and in Golden Dawn, and pretty much everywhere you look, red is associated with fire. Who looks at this and sees red? What is red about this? No, it's yellow. Yeah, like hellfire. Somebody sees it. It turns out Islam and I, are the only people who look at fire and don't think, that's red. No, it's yellow, right? Right? Okay, so, as a description of the color of the cow that Moses was commanded to sacrifice. Some of the negative symbolism of yellow lies in the fact that it describes the withering process of plants of all colors that must turn yellow during their natural process of death and decay. In addition, yellow is connected to fire, especially that of hell. Yellow is the most prominent example of gender differentiation through colors insofar as it was prohibited for males. According to Hadith literature, the Prophet prohibited men from wearing yellow. The Prophet, peace be upon him, has prohibited us from wearing yellow clothing. The explanation for the prohibition of wearing yellow for men is complicated, combining gender with Muslim elitism. Imposing the prohibition of men wearing yellow with the explanation that it is the heretic's color and confirms females' inferiority Trigger warning for people living after the 8th century. All right. And fortifies never mind, I won't get into politics. Okay. Inferiority and fortifies the assumption that only Muslim men can correctly represent the appropriate principles of personification in Islam. Blah, 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 blah. All right. So yellow is not good in traditional, mainstream, old school Islam. There's a little more. It is interesting to note that yellow was used as a discriminative color not only to differentiate men, women, and hermaphrodites. There's a whole thing about hermaphrodites wearing yellow. Hermaphrodites are like required to wear yellow, so that everybody knows if you see a man wearing yellow, he's a hermaphrodite. They didn't like hermaphrodites. We, of course, loved them, but back then, the trad types, but also between Muslims and Jewish subjects, between Muslims and rebels against the Muslim regime. Jews were ordered to wear a yellow patch on their upper clothing. And by the way, this was over 1,000 years before, I'm pretty sure, over 1,000 years before they were ordered to wear a yellow Star of David in a certain world war, yester century. Anyway, that's where they got the idea, was from the Arabs that they were hanging out with in those days. But also against, it's depressing. Okay, so the Christians were ordered to wear a blue patch to identify them, and the Jews were chosen they had to wear a yellow patch in certain, when they were living under Islamic rule back in those days. So this is all very depressing stuff about yellow, right? But Sufism isn't just Islam. It's mystic Islam. It's kind of a tradition that operates within and perhaps apart from Islam. Much in the same way that the tradition you see me embodying with my clothes and with the symbols that I often allude to is a tradition that goes on within the western half of the Christian church, within the Roman Catholic Empire, if you will, / British, which is just basically it had a baby. It's a a zygote that turned into a fraternal identical twins or something. The British Empire is basically Rome 2.0, right? So this is to the Pope, as Sufism perhaps is to this stuff, this Islamic stuff. So I went and Googled again, and I searched for yellow in Sufism. And here's what I got. This is from a blog called Zikr-e-Dili. Dili means Delhi, as in the capital of India. Sufi Basant, a celebration of yellow. Here's the picture at the top of the article. This immersive kalam was it's in another language, probably Urdu. I'm not going to try to read it. Anyway, so passed down by Hazrat Amir Khusro for his Mehboob Ilahi Khawaja Nizamuddin. It's almost over. Auliya, the 13th to 14th century Sufi saint of Chishti Silsila order, of a certain Sufi order that was in India. So like Sufis had to like sneak around a little bit in like the Midwest, the Middle East, but in India, like the emperors were Sufis, so it was a whole different ball game in India. Sufi's really big here. Among the numerous qawwalis, this poem reverberates on the occasion and celebration of Sufi Basant at Nizamuddin Hargah. Along with qawwalis, this annual celebration at the Dargah is drenched in yellow basanti from devotees donning yellow, turbans, kurtas, caps, and veils, picture, to mustard, sunflower, and marigold flowers that are carried on bamboo baskets, along with the basanti chadar, are offered to Aulia. The tradition of this celebration of the seasonal shift from gloomy winter to joyous spring at Dargah can be traced back to 13th, 14th century Delhi, as in Delhi, the capital of India. Nizamuddin Aulia was devastated on the knowledge of the death of his young nephew. He became gloomy, reclusive, as he grieved his death for a long time. This led him toward enforced isolation as he spent all of his time at his nephew's grave. His disciples, including Khusro, became agitated at his melancholic condition. After several failed efforts to bring the beloved Khwaji back to his old self, one day Khusro came across several women dressed in yellow. By came across, he means he saw them, not like anything weird, I assume. It was a different time. They didn't use the word. In fact, here they still use cum, or they pronounce it cum. It's spelled C-U-M, but it means like with and in addition to, like bill cum receipt. They say, here's your bill cum receipt, and I always go, or, you see restaurant cum hotel, or hotel cum restaurant. I'm like, I'm always taking pictures and posting. Well, Gwydion's always taking pictures and posting. Old British stuff. Anyway, sorry. He came across several women dressed in yellow, holding the merry yellow flowers, singing and dancing through the streets. On learning that the joyous women were celebrating Basant and the flowers were offering to God, Khusro immediately came up with the idea of dressing in a yellow ghagra, along with chunni. Some accounts refer to him draped in a sari. Him in a sari. A little interesting, right? Back then. Which covered his face and adorned marigold flowers, and along with his dole, which held some mustard flowers, he landed at his beloved Khawaja's doorstep. He began to sing and dance on the beat of dole in Braj language. And it cheered up the Sufi saint, basically, right? Khusro succeeded in his efforts at this spectacle, brought a smile upon Khawaji's face, and marks the end of the mourning period. Till this date, the Dargah, through its procession and celebration, continues this tradition of Sufi Basant as it turned the gloomy Khwaja into a joyous one. Thank you, the Sufi tradition of India 700 years ago, for redeeming the color yellow in episode 35 of Meccan Revelation on chicken philosophy. So what are we going to put on the screen? Well, in the spirit of joy and India and celebrating diversity and India, in India specifically, I thought, first of all, this statue of Guru Nanak, the founder of Sikhism. In fact, Sikh means disciple, and it refers to his disciples. And then later there were other gurus. There were 10 gurus, and the 11th one was the book. And anyway, so he's going to be representing yellow. And you've heard me talk before about there were issues between them and the emperors, certain emperors. But like the average folk and the Sufi saints and stuff, not so much. You don't hear about like battles between Sikh gurus and Sufi saints. They're kind of on the same page. So he's representing yellow for today, and for green, of course. As we should know, Vajrayana Buddhism originated in India and was exported to places like Tibet and Japan before the emperors and warlords of Islamic persuasion, for whatever reason, were threatened by people like Chenrezig, and particularly targeted the Buddhists, maybe because there were vastly more Hindus than there were Buddhists. They all but wiped Buddhism off the map of India at that time. So thank goodness Buddhism was popular elsewhere outside of India, otherwise it wouldn't exist anymore, basically. So here we have Sikhism, yellow, Buddhism, green, and, that's not everybody. Aside from colors, we've got we've got Mahavir. He's going to hang out down here by Guru Nanak. He, of course, loosely speaking, is, you could say, the founder of Jainism, though the Jains would be quick to point out that he was not the founder of Jainism. He was the 24th Tirthankara of Jainism, and Jainism goes back to antiquity and before. You've heard of the Indus River Valley civilization? That was fucking yesterday. The Jains have been around since the Big Bang. So anyway, but he's the first person that we kind of have a record of him existing and teaching, and he was a contemporary with Lord Buddha. He might have been Buddha's teacher. Controversial, Edward. And also, of course, obviously, there's Hinduism. There's many gods of Hinduism. Among them is Sarasvati. She used to live on top of this bookshelf because she is the goddess of knowledge, as well as music and such. And she, for today, is going to hang out down here with the green Chenrezig, the Bodhisattva of compassion. That's him right there. And, yeah. So, and just for fun, we've got a few more. We've got, this is Sai Baba. Not the, there's more than one Sai Baba, but hopefully I don't mean like the big-haired, like creepy cult leader molester guy. When someone says Sai Baba and they're not talking about some controversial cult from the 70s, they're referring to this Sai Baba. He's Sai Baba of something, but it's kind of like, do I have to say of Assisi when I say St. Francis, so you don't assume I'm talking about St. Francis Xavier? Well, St. Francis Xavier is the patron saint of Goa, so this is my first experience living in Goa. Is the first time I have to explain that I'm talking about, no, the other St. Francis. There's another one? Yeah, the original St. Francis of Assisi. He was the one. Never mind. Anyway, so we're going to put Sai Baba here. He was cool with the Muslims and the Hindus. He didn't take a side. He was an enlightened person who he, kind of preached to both sides. Guru Nanak was like, both sides have some good points and a lot of bad points. And so he was like kind of critical of both the Hindus and the Muslims. He said there's only one God and Muhammad is not his prophet. And so he kind of made a lot of enemies, with his speaking of the truth. Whereas Sai Baba had more of a tendency to, like, the Hindus and the Muslims that heard him speak were like, right on, brother, preach, and then, don't you guys hate each other for some reason? They're like, I don't think so, we're all on board with Sai Baba. And of course, like how Islam came to India from outside India, so too did another form of Judaism, Christianity. So we're going to have Jesus hanging out here too. So we've got a whole kumbaya, thing. There's more, I'm sure, but these are kind of the main 7. There's the Sufism that we're going to read today, and there's the 6 guests here today, and that's going to be our yellow and green for today. And there it is. So this is the final episode of the 15 color-focused, color-obsessed, those 15. And now I'm going to finally get to the incense. You thought I was going to say the reading, didn't you? It'll come. It's time. How's everybody doing? I enjoy, just to mention, I enjoy doing this. It's a fun activity for me to do. It helps me kind of, I don't know, like I'm working on diet and exercise in my personal life, and having a project to focus on, kind of helps me stay in good spirits so that I'm not just like doom scrolling and, I don't know, like thinking about all the food that I'm not going to eat until Sunday. By the way, tomorrow's Sunday, so. Ood. So yeah, my point is this whole thing started. If you watch the early episodes of Chicken Philosophy, then you know that I was very much like insisting upon. I was even like intentionally making the episodes unpleasant so that people would click away. I was like, go away. This isn't for you. This is just for me. I want to read this stuff, and I have a problem where I can't seem to get myself to read anything boring unless I'm recording it for a YouTube channel. So that's what I'm doing. This is for me. It's not for you. So fuck off, everybody. That was my attitude a year and 3 months ago. And gradually over time, Chicken Philosophy has changed. But one thing that hasn't changed is that I'm doing this for myself. So I remember when Esoteric Nerd was my artistic outlet back in 2016, 2017, there was like a week where I put out 5 episodes in the same week. And I had a friend who was telling me, like, you know, the podcasts that do best are the ones that have weekly episodes that come out at a particular time every week. And I was like, fuck off. Fuck off with that shit. Life is short. I only have a certain amount of time. I don't know how many, of these, like, if I have 5 interviews lined up with really good people, like the guy who made the Golden Dawn album, and, a bunch of other people that were really interesting, and they're all available this week, and I'm available this week, I'm not doing anything, so yeah, we're doing an episode every day, and so that was kind of my attitude then about that at that time. So yeah, and that was another case where, like, my artistic outlet, my artistic expression is this right now. And so if someone's a painter and, you wouldn't necessarily tell them, like, you're painting too much for us, or gosh, you paint for us so much, like, a painter is a painter because he has to paint. I'm painting. I have to do this. I'm glad that people enjoy it. There's some people that enjoy it. Hello, you know who you are. Yeah. But ultimately, I'm doing it for me. And sometimes when an episode is too good, I have to, like, intentionally bring the standard down, because the last thing I want is to, like, be trying to make every episode as good as that last one. Because then it will become torturous. It'll become hellish instead of my personal little paradise heaven expression of freedom playtime. This is playtime for me. This is how I play. In the Quran and the Hadith, the term free, or her, I don't know how to pronounce things in Arabic. H-U-R-R, like Ben, maybe. Along with certain derivatives, refers to the status of someone who is free as opposed to someone who is the property of another person. Very popular practice in those days, and still is in certain places. I won't say where, because I don't want to seem like an asshole. All right, anyway. But the term abid, slave or servant, denotes not only being owned by someone, but also the proper human situation before God. As was indicated in the introduction to chapters 130 and 131, one may not be owned by another human being, but one can hardly be free before God. In Sufism, freedom was early considered a high spiritual station. Not, of course, in opposition to being God's slave, but as another side of the same reality. Abu Nasr al-Sarraj, from 378 or 988, so 988 by our time, 378 by Muslim time. Yeah, it's a different calendar. By our, I mean the common calendar. Anyway, the one you're probably familiar with, I mean, who's like on YouTube and like 1978, when was that? Oh, you mean 1113. I'm used to the Islamic calendar. Everybody knows the common calendar, right? Pretty much everybody. Even that whole thing about 1453, where the never mind, I'll just keep reading. Writes, quote within quotes, freedom, end quote within quotes, is an allusion, with an A, not an I, to the fullest degree of the realization of servanthood. It is that you should not be owned by any engendered, that is created, or other kind of thing, so that you are free, since you are God's slave. Thank you, Depeche Mode. Hopefully I was able to use that without getting this video blocked. Alright, anyway. Hence Bishr said to since Bishr al-Hafi said to Sari al-Sakati concerning the words of the prophet, quote within quotes, God created you free, so be as you were created, end quote within quotes. Quote within quotes, do not take into account your family when at home or your companions when traveling. Do everything for God and leave people aside. End quote within quotes. Amen to that. Or Amin, I should say. That's kind of what I was saying about how never mind. Playtime. Junaid said, quote within quotes, the final station of the knower is freedom, end quote within quotes. Am I allowed to use this song?
Welcome to the playground.
I've been rewatching season 1 of Arcane in preparation for season 2 to come out, because it's a damn good show. Damn good show. It's rare to have such a good show. Anyway, where were we? I don't know. I think I said the final station of the knower is freedom, end quote within quotes. Another said, quote within quotes, the servant is not a true servant as long as he is in bondage to anything other than God, end quote within quotes, end quote. Servant cannot serve two masters. In his usual manner, Ibn al-Arabi has in mind the sayings of earlier masters as the background for what he wants to explain. But he then takes the concept of freedom back to its deepest meaning in the divine realities. The themes he covers, which are among the most recurrent in the Futuhat, include the contrast between the essence as such, parentheses incomparability, end parentheses, and the properties of the names, parentheses similarity, end parentheses, and the station of the highest saints, parentheses i.e. the blameworthy, though they are not mentioned by name, end parentheses, those who have fully actualized servanthood and put all things in their proper places by acting in accordance with the demands of the names within creation. Concerning the knowledge of the station of freedom and its mysteries. This is a chapter of danger. The servant of self-will has run away from his master's kingdom, but he cannot go outside of it. So he wanders aimlessly. The free man is he who owns all engendered things and is not owned by any property or position. Were he to resist engendered existence, he would nullify his root in his master's kingdom. No, K-N-O-W, no. God give you success. That freedom is a station of the essence, not of the divinity. It cannot be delivered over to the servant absolutely, since he is God's servant, through a servanthood that does not accept emancipation. we have considered freedom impossible for God in respect of his being a divinity because of his relationship to divinity's vassal. A relationship corresponding to that of the Lord to the existence of the servant, the owner of the property, and the king to the kingdom. The owner to the property, and the king to the kingdom. Consider God's words, quote, "If he will, he can put you away and bring another people." The Mormons? End quote. He gives news of bringing another people in respect of this relationship, for the reality of correlation demands, both rationally and ontologically, the concept of two correlative terms. So there can be no freedom within correlation, while lordship and divinity are correlations. But since there is no correspondence or correlation between God and creation, on the contrary, he is, quote, independent of the worlds, end quote, Quran 392. And this belongs to no existent essence except the essence of God. No engendered existent is related to him. No eye perceives him. No limitation encompasses him. And no demonstration found to be necessary by the intellect gives knowledge of him. Just as the negation of the attributes of interdependence that would bring him under delimitation is but speculation. So when the servant desires the realization of this station, for it is one of realization, not of the assumption of traits, and he considers that this can only come about through the disappearance of the poverty that accompanies him because of his possibility, and he also sees that the divine jealousy with a capital D and a capital J, hey, Mr. DJ, put a record on, demands that none be qualified by existence except God, because of the claims existence entails. He knows through these considerations that the ascription of essence to the possible thing is impossible, since jealousy with a capital J is a limitation that prevents it. Hence he looks at his own entity and sees that it is non-existent, possessing no existence, and that non-existence is its intrinsic attribute. So no thought of existence occurs to him. Poverty disappears, and he remains free in the state of possessing non-existence, like the freedom of the essence in its being. Then the servant desires to know what corresponds to the divine names that belong to the essence within the essence of the non-existent possible thing. I'm going to read that again a little slower and see if my brain catches it this time. Then the servant desires to know what corresponds to the divine names that belong to the essence within and the essence of the non-existent possible thing. I'll keep reading. He sees that the entity of every possible thing possesses a preparedness, not possessed by any other, in order that the entities may become distinct. Hence, what separates the essence of the possible thing and the essence of God pertains to the necessary being of God and the necessary non-existence of the possible thing. So the servant gives the preparedness of the possible things a status corresponding to that of the names of God, while the existence of the possible entities belongs to God. I feel like there's a dead and alive cat in a box somewhere in some of these concepts. Maybe adjacent, distant, never mind. So when he becomes manifest to himself in the entity of a possible thing, through one of the divine names, the preparedness of the entity bestows upon him a temporarily originated name, by which he is then called, like BT or Edward or whatever. I see, right? Yeah. Yes. It is said that this is a throne, this an intellect, this a pen, a tablet, a footstool, a celestial sphere, an angel, fire, air, water, earth, an inanimate thing, a plant, an animal, and a man. What? In all kinds and species. Okay, those names. I get it now. Then this reality, with a capital R, permeates the individuals, and it is said that this is Zaid Amr, this horse, this stone, this tree. All of this is bestowed by the preparedness of the entities of the possible things. Hence you infer from the effects of the entities in existence what realities they comprise in their essence. Just as you infer from the effects of the names in existence the divine names, though the named possesses no entity that is perceived. Okay, it sounds a little Platonic, doesn't it? This chair doesn't exist, only chairness exists, that kind of thing. This temporally originated example of chairness. You know what I mean? Never mind. Let's keep reading. Hence, when the possible thing clings to its own entity, we've done that once or twice, it is free with no servanthood. But when it clings to its preparedness, it is a poor servant. So we possess no station in non-delimited freedom in what we have mentioned. So do not allow yourself to maintain anything but this. He who does not contemplate this station will never know the sense of God's words, quote, God is independent of the worlds, end quote, Quran 3:92. Which mean that he is independent of denotation. For if he had brought the world into existence that it might denote him, he could not be independent of it. So know this truth. Who made the world a denotation, and whom does it denote? For he is more manifest and apparent than that his denotation should be sought from something else, or that he could be delimited by a, end quote, other, end quote. If this were the situation, the denotation would possess a certain authority and boasting over that which it denotes. If the object of denotation made the denotation a denotation, the latter would never be separated from the level of vainglory, because it would be giving to its object something that the object could not attain alone. As a result, independence and freedom would be nullified, but these two are established for God. Hence, he did not make the denotations refer to himself, rather to his, bracket parentheses, ontological, end bracket parentheses, level, so that it might be known that there is no God but he. This is the tongue of the elite concerning freedom. As for the tongue of the generality of the Sufis, quote, freedom, end quote, belongs to him who is not enslaved by any engendered existence, only by God. Hence he is free from everything other than God. So freedom is a verified servanthood of God. Its possessor is not the servant of anything but God, who created him to serve him. Hence he fulfills that for which he was created, and it is said concerning him, quote, "How excellent a servant! Indeed, he is constantly returning." End quote. Quran 38:44, i.e. constantly coming back to the servanthood for which he was created, since he was created in need of everything in existence. There is nothing in existence that does not call to him in the tongue of his poverty, quote, "I am that toward which you are poor, so return to me." End quote. If he has knowledge of the true situation, he knows that God is with that phenomenon that calls him, and that he is poor toward it because he has the preparedness for poverty toward it. So he is poor in his very reality. Then he will look at the bestower of that toward which he has need in this phenomenon, and he will see it as the divine name. So he is only poor toward God in respect of his name, and he is only poor through his own self from the effect of his preparedness. Hence he knows what poverty is, who it is that is poor, and toward whom he is poor. That is why the prophet was commanded to say, quote, "My Lord, increase me in knowledge." End quote. Quran 20:113. Thus have I sufficiently apprised you of freedom and its mysteries, things that you will not find in other books, the writings of anyone else. Ibn Arabi tooting his own horn just a little bit. I too sometimes toot my own horn just a little bit. Oh, am I comparing myself to Ibn Arabi? Obviously. Well, that was today's reading. I hope everybody, including the other symbolic figureheads of all the various faiths of India and the world that are on the screen, and you liked it. I enjoyed it. I don't know. I don't really have any complaints about it. And there it is. That's it. That's the end of the 15. Next time, I'll just, be lighting incense, drinking beverages. By the way, I didn't bring a beverage. Doesn't mean I can't drink a beverage. Cheers. And there we have it. All right. I guess that's it. I guess we're done here for now. Yep. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you all for tuning in to this episode, and we'll continue next time with Edward reading Carl Jung. And it'll happen to be blue and black, but we're not going to put much focus on that, but you'll notice it. Blue and black. Yeah, blue and black. There it is. Okay, until then.